Excellent. Put my headphones in. Hope everybody is looking forward to a great weekend. And it's really good to see everybody in their true form today. So, Nitzavim. Nitzavim is the traditional text that is read, Parsha, during the time of Rosh Hashanah, actually, this time during Rosh Hashanah. And a very important. It just seems like the text always follows the times that we're in, and there's so many wonderful things that come out of this. And it's like right before Rosh Hashanah, every year Jews have read this text and went through it, and to see what Moshe Rabbeinu had to say. And there is a reminder to the nation, the people of Israel, and also to the people of us in this time, is this quiet reminder that as we go into a new year, we're also coming into a period of time of readjustment and reevaluation. And this period, obviously, for a pious person, inside the kingdom that you are, is a daily thing. It's not something you just do once a year. It's actually a daily routine. We stand before Hashem in the evening, and we ask for pardon as we pardon others, and we do tshuva every night before we go to bed. Last night, Steve's class, a really good class, but he had touched on, or a question was asked at the end about the idea of creating entities or demons. Remember this in your sin or your goodness. And we explained that these are not things like literal demons, but these will be, you know how somebody says on a regular basis, oh, I'm battling my demons. You know that concept? Well, the idea of battling your demons is this sort of internal struggle of things that are going on. Well, that's what we're talking about. So when a person does a sin or commits a sin, he does tshuva. And tshuva alleviates, and it proper tshuva completely alleviates this negative force that is a testimony against you to now becoming a positive force that testifies towards you in heavenly court, which I find that just phenomenal and beautiful. Now we're coming to Rosh Hashanah, a new year. I guess the question would be asked, what does the B'nai Noach and the Noahide, what does he need to look forward to during this time, and what can we pull out of this text that would help us? Now, God knows that this is about the Jewish people and obviously about all the nations. This whole idea that we're celebrating the new creation, the new world, the creation of the world, and yet we stand here not as bystanders, but participants in the glory of Hashem in the world. And I wanted to point out a couple of basic things that I feel that Moshe is attempting to share with the people in this text, and how apropos it is for the time that the time that we're in right now before judgment. Now, some of the most fundamental principles of the faith is found within this text, short text, chapter 29 and 30 of Nitzavim, Deuteronomy. It says that right off the text, verse 9, it says, you stand this day, all of you before the Lord your God, your heads, your tribes, your elders, and your officials, all the men of Israel, your children, your wives, even the proselyte within your camp, from wood gatherers to the water fillers, to enter the covenant of the Lord your God and to his oath, which the Lord your God is concluding with you this day, in order to stand you this day before him. As a people, he will be your God. Now, first of all, I find the term, and we see it over and over in the Tanakh, this concept of stand before the Lord. and they stood face to face. This whole idea of attention, this standing means that you've got their attention. I don't know if you've tried to discipline a child, but try to discipline a child and talk to them when they're fidgeting and all over the place and touching stuff. Like you have to grab them by the shoulders, look them in the eye and say, stand still, listen to me. Now, I want you to repeat what I'm saying. So it's a very important thing. So what are we learning here? Is right off the bat, Moses is to remind them that we are the most effective when we're unified. We're the most effective when we're unified. The Jewish people, as well as the righteous of the nations. Now, what do we need to be unified around would be the next question. Well, the Jewish people, obviously, their unity is about seeing themselves as a tribe, as a nation, as a people. But the Noahide comes from the nations. So how do we view ourselves? I think it's important that we view ourselves just as the master of the universe would view us, as a wonderful part of his creation, not as a second citizen, but the primary focus of creation. Every man that was put on this earth is a primary focus of creation. Therefore, even though that, as in the text that was brought out yesterday, that it seems that the nations have an apportionment that's different than the Jews. Remember him saying that I am your portion, God is your portion. And then later on, we see in the text that that worshiping idols, that's the apportionment of the nations. And though we have a different apportionment, or I say the nations, as we shirk ourselves of all of those identities and idolatry and turn to Torah, then we are sort of cooperating with Hashem and the mission of the Jewish people to bring light to the nation and light to the world. What do we do to stand before Hashem is an important part of understanding that. I like the fact that he doesn't leave out anything. I know that we've used the phrase where I'm from, the chief cook and bottle washer. It seems that Hashem didn't miss anything when transmitting this through Moses. The water drawer, from the least to the greatest, whatever that means. And I hate to say that, like that sounds a bit, I don't know, like somebody's lesser than the other. I'm not meaning that. The future redemption is also spoken about in this text. Moses warns of an exile and desolation of the land that will result if Israel abandons God's laws. But then he prophesies at the end, and he says, you will return to the Lord your God. Your outcast, here he mentions this wonderful text, your outcast shall be the ends of the heavens. From there will the Lord your God gather you and bring you into the land which your fathers have possessed. Baruch Hashem, we are testifying to that in our postmodern era, that so many Jews are returning. Not enough, but so many are. And how about Jewish souls that may not know they're Jews, who are now a ben or bat Noach? We just don't know. But it seems that there is a spark within humanity that is calling them back to Torah. I now have 2 Christian pastors that have contacted me, and God willing, I'll be able to talk to them before Shabbos, that are wanting to transition and convert, and even consider converting their whole church. And this is a complicated thing, and I'm going to be talking to them. I'm not sure their approach is the best approach, but I'm going to try to give them some proper kosher responses and answers to help guide them along. But two pastors and whole congregations, how often have we heard that? And it seems more and more as we go later. But it is those people that are in the nations that are those divine sparks. The practicality of Torah is also something that is mentioned within this text. He says, for the mitzvah, which I command you this day, is not beyond you, nor is it remote from you. It's not in heaven. I mentioned this, and we'll cross the sea. You're not going to go to some giant guru and find out, but rather it is very close to you. It's in your mouth, in your heart, that you may do it. One of the things that I have as a ethos in my home is understanding the power of speech. Now, every one of you guys will understand what I'm talking about and agree with the fact that we create an environment that we live in by our speech and by our thought patterns. It's easy to get locked into a negative thinking. It's easy to get locked into thinking on a dark side. And I'm not talking about evil. I'm talking about someone who tends to just have a negative mindset toward things. It's so easy to get sucked into that. But in the full aspect of understanding how important it is to how to do the mitzvah and accomplish the mitzvah is important. But the mitzvah is not going to take place. The mitzvah is not going to be fully realized. And when I say mitzvah, I'm talking about all the things that Hashem has presented to the Jewish people up to this point, and that he's commanded them. It's not too far from you. So where is this? It's in our manner of thinking and our speech. When it says in your mouth and in your heart that you might do it. That means that every human being has the ability to tap in to a source that elevates their soul and elevates their conscience. Every human being, when they think and when they contemplate purity and goodness, it elevates them and gives them the ability to do it. Now, Rabbi Avner would know probably the Hebrew phrase, which escapes me, but the Hebrew phrase that basically says, do a mitzvah, gain a mitzvah. Do a sin, gain a sin. It's like the more you do it, the worse it gets or the better it gets. It's like that in life, period, practicality of life. You do something long enough, you get good at it. But I also know that a person who is ultimately successful in their ventures, whether it is Torah, whether it is business, that never leaves their mind. They're constantly thinking about how they can do the job better, how they can make it better, how they can reconfigure it and make a better profit, or in the case of a spiritual person, to contemplate on a constant basis, how can I improve myself and make myself better? And the way it happens is by uttering the very words, Hashem, help me to be a better person. Help me to love and absorb your Torah. Help me to be a demonstration of Torah. So in the same way that Moses is encouraging the Jewish people, and he encourages Jewish generations from the time that we started reading the Parsha, that right before the starting of the new year, it's time to reevaluate everything, not only yourself, but your position within a community. When I say a position within the community, both Jew and non-Jew, it's to look at yourself and how you are reflected in other people. How do other people see you? There's a app, I understand. I don't understand how it works. Maybe you guys can explain it to me. But there's like a mirror that's made that actually shows you what you look like from the other person's perspective. Have you heard this? No? Head? No? There is a mirror that you can purchase, and I think you can also do it on a phone, but I'm not sure. But when you look at yourself, because you're looking at this reversed image, you see yourself one way, but other people see you differently. And so when they put people and children or whatever in this mirror that gets you to see the same thing they see, it's like, wow, that's like, I didn't know I looked that way. And they look to themselves better than what they perceive themselves as they look in the mirror, which is a beautiful thing. I think if there's anything that's a noble trait of a righteous person, is they never think they're righteous. A tzaddik never thinks, I'm a tzaddik. However, you look in the mirror and go, I want to be a better person. I want to die with my spiritual boots on. Like, I really want to be the person who's attempted to achieve higher levels of spirituality and consciousness in my life. And I wish I one day could be that way. And lo and behold, somebody turns the mirror around and you get to see what they see. Hopefully, God willing, what they see is the Zadok that you want to be. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about finding yourself in a path of being absorbed with the mitzvahs and being absorbed with Torah in every aspect. So number one, the unity of Israel, but we're also talking about the unity of mankind for the days to come. Every human being, and I realize it's talking about uniquely with the tribe of Israel in the desert, where they had the people, even the ger in your gate. Very interesting term that could be researched out, but I mentioned it last night. But that whole idea that even I would even say you, is that person or the proselyte that is coming near to the Jewish people, you are a part of that unity. You may not see it sometimes, you may not feel it, especially if you're isolated, you're watching this video, you don't have a community, you don't know anybody else that's a Noahide. I encourage you to be a part of a Noahide community. It doesn't matter. We'd love you to be a part of our community. But I really would like to see you a part of a community. There are so many online ways to study. And obviously, if you can get to a local rabbi or synagogue who will teach you, then that's even better. But otherwise, we look at our unity. Next, the future of redemption. We understand that there was a future of redemption that we have seen in our history of the Jewish people, from the time the 10 tribes were exiled out of the land, to the pogroms, to the Holocaust, you name it. Jewish people have been paraded around and put on display to be ridiculed because of this idea that they need redemption. But thank God we're living in redemption. We need to utter more often, thank you that I'm living in the time of redemption, and I will see Mashiach. I will see the day that the land is completely possessed by the people of Hashem. And last, the whole idea is the practicality of Torah. Torah is not some great mystery that cannot be achieved. Righteousness is not something that's so far out there that you can't find it. And look, I know a lot of people have went to alternative spiritual routes. They go to study Buddhism, or they go become a monk. They do all these things in the race to try to find themselves. And in reality, Hashem lists out these mitzvahs, and they're not difficult. It doesn't mean that you starve yourself or take a vow of silence, or you only eat bread and water for your whole life, or you abstain from any marital relationships at all. I'm not talking about this. These mitzvahs are practical. They make sense. Now, some things seems beyond our rationality, but at the same time, it makes sense to a righteous person because they realize the master of the universe knows why these are in place. Last but not least, the text that says, I have set before you life and goodness, death and evil. In that I command you this day to love God, to walk in his ways and keep his commandments. Notice something that I noticed here was almost a matrix of success. What is required? It says, I command you this day to love God. How is it accomplished? Walking in his ways and keeping his commandments. It's important that walking in his ways refers to back what I was talking about, this idea of constant consciousness and verbal speaking of goodness that you want to achieve in your life and focusing on mitzvah. That's walking in his ways. The actual keeping of the mitzvahs is keeping his commandments. And he says, here's a free choice. This is what's so beautiful about the whole thing. It's a free choice. You determine if you want life in physicality or death. What do you want? If you want life in physicality, you want to be successful, good things, and you want to live and have great families, then your commandments that you do are going to achieve that. And this whole idea is you have a choice. Every human being has a choice. And we get that choice daily to get up and to make a difference. And as we move into the new year, I would like you to visualize with me a locking of arms of this community, bringing ourselves together and locking arms. And since Rabbi Avner is here, he's locked arms with us as well. And we want to project into next year a single-mindedness, a unity to connect to Hashem in a different way than we did last year. I've said this, I'll say it over again. If I'm the same person now that I was 2 years ago, I need to reevaluate myself. Now, I'm not talking about personality-wise. I'm just talking about by my mitzvahs and actions. What am I doing? And now that we've locked arms together, we realize we're standing with a sense of unity and purpose. And that we recognize that the future redemption, as we know it, as was predicted in the text that we read, half of that or more is gone. And now we're in the latter half. And he says, your outcast will be at the ends of the heavens, and there will the Lord your God gather you. Baruch Hashem, he's gathering people from all four corners of the earth. There's a big movement in Africa right now. I don't know if you realize it. It's just amazing. The Philippines is still doing fantastic. As a matter of fact, Yeshiva Perkei Shoshanim and NETIV by default are now listed as an NGO at the UN. They're official non-governmental organization. And Rabbi Todd has been invited to a symposium in Manila, I think is where it's at, that the UN is holding on religious freedom and persecution. And to feel that we have one of our rabbis who is such an avid supporter of the pious of the nations. And also knowing that the Philippines, in Manila, the Philippines has one of the largest Noahide communities in the world. We're talking about thousands of people, and that he will represent those people. What a great example that we have. We need to start looking, instead of seeing ourselves as a small band of beleaguered bandits, that we are actually people, a part of the big picture. Like we're part of this big picture, guys. And I know that we come on like, oh, do our Torah study. But man, it's time to step back and realize we're going into a new year. There's no reason why redemption couldn't be propelled forward. Now, God only knows the days, good and bad, that we'll have. It's immaterial to me and you, because we only have one goal, one focus, and that is continue to walk in unity, continue to understand the power of redemption and the promise and the prophecy that says that God will gather in. That means that there will not be one particular soul that was supposed to be gathered that is not gathered. God gathers. He's the farmer. He's going to take care of the harvest. Next, we're going to be people that are going to look at mitzvahs not as some mystery, but as a practicality. It's something we do because it just makes sense to make the world a better place. And last, we're not doing this under duress. And this is the beautiful part. None of us in this room are doing this under duress. None of us are doing this because we're scared to go to hell. None of us. None of us are doing this because we're scared that God, in his vengefulness, will one day strike blind all of the people of the nations and elevate the Jews to some higher level. We're not concerned about that. We do it because it makes sense. It's practical, and we love Hashem, and we love his Torah, and we choose it freely. Now that concludes my Devar. And so let's open the floor up for general discussion. Any ideas, questions, commentary? I'd love to hear from you. Who would be first?